There is a peculiar moment in every seeker's journey, often quiet, often veiled in the soft shadows of fatigue and frustration, when they begin to suspect that the world around them, the thoughts within them, and the patterns that repeat through their lives are not simply random nor merely mechanical. It's the moment when the ordinary feels suspiciously familiar, like a song on repeat, whose lyrics have shifted ever so slightly, but whose rhythm remains unchanged. That is the moment one begins to realize you are in a loop. But this loop is not made of clocks or calendars. It is made of thoughts, of desires that masquerade as purpose, of stories handed down like heirlooms through culture, family, fear. It is made of subtle repetitions, so finely disguised as novelty that even the most enlightened among us may not notice its quiet insistence. The loop is the whisper behind your choices, the shadow behind your growth, the familiar ache behind your freedom. And yet, paradoxically, mystically, this loop is also your teacher. To understand the loop is to begin seeing through time itself. It is not merely a sequence of cause and effect. It is a fractal of experience, a spiral staircase you've walked before, again and again, believing each revolution brings you higher, not realizing you've been circling the same level of self with different costumes, different relationships, different crises. The loop is not punishment, it is a mirror, and the loop is clever. It rewards forgetfulness and decorates stagnation with ornaments of busyness, ambition, and identity. It whispers, "You are evolving," when really, you are orbiting the same gravitational wound. But what if the loop could be interrupted? What if the rhythm could be broken, not through force, but through remembrance? There is a key, but it cannot be found in the same dimension where the loop plays. The key does not belong to the linear mind, nor to the egoic structures that survive on continuity. The key exists outside the narrative you call you. This is not about conspiracy. It is not about the government, the media, or external puppeteers, though all of those are certainly tangled in the theater of the loop. No, the true loop is not out there. The true loop is within. It is internalized programming, soul amnesia, and the entrancing lullaby of a dream you forgot you were dreaming. And the exit key? The exit key is not a thing, but a moment. A moment so delicate, so luminous, it almost always arrives in silence. It is the moment you see the pattern while still inside it. It's when you laugh, not because something is funny, but because you finally understand why the pain always had the same flavor. It is not a door you open, but a turning inward, so sharp and sudden. The loop shatters upon contact with presence, and presence, true, radical presence, is the only solvent of illusion. You may feel the edges of the loop already. Perhaps you're waking at odd hours with a heavy but wordless knowing. Perhaps you've begun seeing synchronicities, repeating numbers, déjà vu, signs that seem to wink at you from behind the veil. Perhaps your relationships have become mirrors too clear to ignore, showing you the faces of your own resistance. These are not glitches in your life. They are invitations, and still, most refuse the call. Because the loop, while limiting, is comfortable. It wraps around your consciousness like warm static, like a cage you've convinced yourself is the sky. But no soul was born to orbit endlessly. You were made to break the rhythm. You were made to transcend it, not by ascending out of your humanity, but by remembering the divinity that hums at its core. You are not here to escape the loop. You are here to awaken within it. This is not just philosophy. This is not abstract mysticism floating in clouds of vague language. This is visceral, real, and immediate. You know the loop by its fruits, the repeating heartbreaks, the cyclic fears, the self-sabotage that returns dressed as new insight. You know it in the way you resist stillness, how quickly you reach for noise. You know it in how hard you work to build a life that looks free but feels trapped. This exploration, you are trapped in the loop, and this is your exit key, is not merely a revelation. It is a map, a transmission, a compass drawn from ancient truths, personal remembrance, and the echoes of souls who have broken their own cycles and returned to tell the tale. It will not give you salvation, because you were never truly lost. It will not provide answers in the old way, because the loop feeds on answers. Instead, it offers something far more dangerous: awareness. And with awareness comes responsibility. You will see things you can't unsee. You will recognize yourself in every jail cell and every open sky. You will understand that freedom was never about leaving. It was about awakening where you are. So take a breath, not just into your lungs, but deep into the silence that watches your thoughts. Prepare to peel back layers of self that were never yours to begin with. The loop is ancient, but the key is eternal. The loop is not a myth, nor merely a metaphor. It is the architecture beneath most human thought, experience, and conditioning. It appears innocuous, woven into our daily lives, camouflaged by routine and expectation. But it is everywhere. The moment you wake and reach for your phone, the repeated internal dialogue that begins before your feet even touch the floor, the emotional cycles that seem to spin on cue with uncanny timing. The loop is not simply repetition. It is the illusion of progress under the disguise of motion. At its core, the loop is a distortion of time and identity. It is a self-contained circuit of perception that feeds on itself, looping thoughts back into thoughts, fears back into fears, beliefs back into beliefs. It is not bound by clocks or calendars, but by programming, an invisible operating system coded into consciousness, inherited through ancestral memory, collective trauma, cultural belief systems, and karmic echoes. It is a karmic hamster wheel that spins until you realize you are not the hamster. You are the one observing the wheel. To truly grasp the loop, we must first understand its favorite illusion: separation. The loop thrives when you believe that you are separate from life, from source, from others, from your higher self. It whispers that there is a destination you must reach, a success you must earn, a truth you must find. And in doing so, it ensures you are always moving, but never arriving. This separation creates striving, and striving becomes the rhythm of the loop. The loop does not care what you strive for: wealth, love, validation, even spiritual enlightenment, as long as you remain in motion and forget the still point within. But there is a paradox hidden in plain sight. The loop only continues if you believe it is real. It is maintained not by its strength, but by your attention. And attention, pure, unfiltered awareness, is the most sacred currency in the cosmos. That which you observe without judgment begins to dissolve. That which you resist persists. The loop cannot be defeated. It can only be seen. And when it is seen clearly enough, it unravels like mist before the sun. Another cornerstone of the loop is identity addiction. We are taught from birth to define ourselves through form, through name, body, role, nationality, even trauma. These are costumes we wear so convincingly that we forget we are wearing them. But the deeper self, the eternal witness, is beyond form. It has no age, no wound, no story. It simply is. The loop requires you to stay committed to the illusion of self. It rewards you when you perform your identity convincingly, and it punishes you when you dare to dissolve it. The loop is also cyclical in its emotional design. Think of it as a wheel whose spokes are fear, shame, guilt, pride, and craving, each pulling you into predictable responses. You may think you've grown because you changed careers or cities or partners, but if the emotional pattern remains the same, the loop has simply changed scenery. It's the same wheel, spinning in disguise. The ancient mystics knew this well. In the East, it was samsara, the endless wheel of birth, death, and rebirth, driven by desire and ignorance. In the West, it was the fall, the descent into egoic duality, where humanity forgot its divine nature and began to toil for meaning outside itself. Gnostic texts, Hermetic scrolls, and mystery schools all speak of this loop with different symbols: the matrix, the labyrinth, Maya, the underworld. But the message is the same. The world you see is not the truth. It is a construct designed to provoke awakening. And what is the exit key? It is not a ladder to climb or a gate to unlock. It is a shift in perception so fundamental that it reorders your relationship with reality. It is not about leaving the game, but realizing you were the dreamer of the game all along. The exit key is the remembrance of what you are beyond identity, beyond mind, beyond form. It is the moment you stop chasing and start seeing. This does not mean abandoning your life. It means awakening within it. To drink coffee and answer emails and raise children, not as a trapped soul, but as a conscious player who knows the rules and is no longer bound by them. You do not leave the loop by escaping into fantasy or floating above it in some spiritual bypass. You exit the loop by embodying awareness in the midst of the cycle, by bringing stillness into the spin. One of the most profound realizations you will encounter is this: the loop is not your enemy. It is your teacher. It shows you what remains unconscious. It magnifies your blind spots. It forces you to repeat until you wake up to what you're repeating. Pain is not punishment. It is precision. The loop applies pressure where you are asleep until the dream cracks and the light pours through. To exit the loop is not to become special or superior. It is to become empty. Empty of false narratives, of mental noise, of inherited stories. And in that emptiness, there is space for truth. Not the intellectual kind, but the truth that is felt like a remembering in your bones. A sacred returning. As we move deeper, keep this with you. The loop is not merely a pattern to break, but a language to decode. It speaks through metaphor, archetype, symbol, and now we must learn to listen to it in a new way, through the lens of story. To understand the architecture of the loop is one thing, but to feel its presence, to see it mirrored in myth, dream, and ancient story, is to access a deeper resonance, one that bypasses logic and speaks directly to the soul. The loop is not only a mechanism of mind, it is a mythic pattern, a living allegory that plays itself out across time and consciousness. It does not speak in plain language, it speaks in symbols, archetypes, and echoes, because truth, when too raw, must wear the clothing of story to be safely digested. Imagine a vast labyrinth, not one of stone, but one woven from thought, belief, and unprocessed memory. You are born into this labyrinth blindfolded, each turn determined by the conditioning of those who came before. Parents, teachers, governments, religions, they do not build the maze with malice. They too are wandering within it, tracing inherited steps, the blind leading the blind through the echoes of the forgotten self. And yet, scattered throughout the maze are sigils, moments that shimmer strangely, people who feel oddly familiar, events that seem to pull at the seams of your ordinary perception. These are not accidents. These are breadcrumbs. In the symbolic language of ancient lore, the loop often took the form of a serpent eating its own tail, the Ouroboros. It is a symbol of eternity, yes, but also of cyclical entrapment, life consuming itself, thought consuming thought, self feeding on self. But what few realize is that the Ouroboros does not represent endlessness as punishment. It represents potentiality waiting to be interrupted. The serpent devours its tail only because it has forgotten its head. The loop continues only because you do not remember the one who watches. Let us consider another myth. The story of Sisyphus. Condemned to push a boulder uphill for eternity, only for it to roll back down each time. What if this is not a punishment for defying the gods, but a mirror of humanity's unconscious cycle, pushing goals, dreams, identities uphill, believing freedom lies at the summit, only to find the weight of ego rolling back down again and again? The loop is not the boulder. The loop is the belief that reaching the top will make you whole. And yet, the whisper of liberation lies in this. What happens the moment Sisyphus stops pushing? What is revealed in surrender? Or imagine the myth of Narcissus, the young man who gazes so deeply into his reflection that he drowns in it. This too is the loop, the trap of the ego admiring itself, chasing itself, never looking away long enough to realize that the reflection is not real. We spend lifetimes caught in this feedback loop of identity and validation, staring into social mirrors, digital mirrors, emotional mirrors, unaware that the exit key has always been to turn our gaze inward, not into self-obsession, but into stillness. Even the story of Prometheus carries a coded truth, the titan who stole fire from the gods and gave it to man, only to be bound in chains and sentenced to eternal torment. What if the fire was not just literal? What if it was the spark of divine awareness, the light of gnosis, the knowledge that reality itself can be questioned? And what if the punishment was the loop, the sentence of suffering given to those who awaken just enough to see the prison, but not yet enough to walk through the open gate? These stories do not simply entertain. They initiate. They transmit. They encode wisdom that language alone cannot hold. The mystics knew this, which is why the sacred texts often read like riddles and parables. The mind craves instruction, but the soul awakens through symbolism. Consider your own life. Look closely, without judgment. Where do the same themes repeat? Not just in what happens to you, but in how you respond. Does every new beginning carry the scent of the same ending? Do you find yourself meeting the same kind of person in different bodies, facing the same emotional challenge under new circumstances? These are not random. They are your personal myths, looping until seen. Your subconscious is a library of symbolic narratives. Every nightmare is a parable, every obsession a character in a cosmic drama begging for resolution. The loop will use these stories to guide you home, but only if you stop resisting their message, if you stop trying to solve them with logic and begin to listen. The exit key is often disguised as the thing you most avoid, the emotion you suppress, the memory you won't touch, the truth you keep hidden beneath performance. In dreams, the exit is rarely a door. It is a collapse of walls. It is the moment you realize the monster chasing you is you. The loop does not break through effort. It breaks through recognition. And so, The stories we inherit, whether ancient myths or personal cycles, are maps. But the map is not the territory. The key is not in deciphering every symbol. It is in feeling their echo. Let the stories speak to you in their native tongue, which is not English or logic, but resonance. That subtle shift inside you when something just clicks, even if you can't explain why. That's the language of the soul. You are not here to escape the myth. You are here to awaken within it, to become lucid in the dream. That is the sacred paradox. You exit the loop not by leaving the play, but by remembering you are both actor and author. That realization alone begins to bend the script. And so we turn now toward the ordinary, not to leave the symbolic behind, but to carry it like a torch into your daily existence. How does one live this awareness? How do you walk through your day with the exit key held gently in your palm, no longer seeking, but seeing? The shift from understanding to embodiment is where transformation truly takes root. It is one thing to grasp the concept of the loop, to witness its mechanisms, to see the symbolic patterns playing out, but quite another to walk into your life with your eyes still open. This is where the real alchemy begins. The realm of theory is safe, poetic, even beautiful. But the moment you must bring that insight into your relationships, your reactions, your work, and your stillness, that's where the exit key burns with a holy heat. Integration is the firewalk. To live in the world while remembering that you are not entirely of it is to walk a tightrope between paradoxes. The loop will still appear. Your old wounds will still knock on the door, but the difference is in your gaze. The loop thrives on unconscious momentum. Break that momentum, and something ancient begins to stir. It begins in the smallest things. You're about to speak an automatic defense when someone challenges you, but a pause emerges. Not just a mental hesitation, but a space, a sacred pause that holds the entire moment. In that space, the loop loses power. For the first time, maybe in years, you are not reacting. You are seeing. That's not just a psychological trick. That's presence. That's the quantum crack in the matrix. The exit key, you see, is not a one-time event. It's not a single portal you step through and never return. It is a practice, a return, a muscle of awareness that must be exercised through every mundane moment. Each time you choose to see the loop instead of becoming it, you are transmuting it, not destroying it, liberating it. The loop is not an enemy to be vanquished. It is an imprisoned teacher waiting to be recognized. One of the first signs of integration is emotional lucidity. You begin to see emotions not as absolute truths, but as messages. You stop saying, "I am angry," and instead say, "Anger is arising." You are no longer inside the storm. You are the sky watching it pass. This subtle shift rewrites lifetimes of conditioning. The loop depends on identification. Withdraw that identification, and you become the observer. And the observer is free. As your awareness deepens, so does your capacity to see the loop in others. Not to judge them, but to recognize the shared trance. You'll see how arguments recycle the same energetic blueprint. How families unknowingly reenact ancestral pain like actors on a stage they didn't audition for. How entire systems, economic, political, religious, are designed not for liberation, but repetition. And yet, you won't despair. Because the exit key doesn't require the world to awaken, it only requires you to awaken within the world. You begin to relate to time differently. The rush slows. The craving for outcomes dissolves. You no longer obsess over future peaks or past valleys. Presence becomes your compass. From this place, choices become cleaner, not clouded by egoic urgency. You speak less, but your words carry more power. You act with precision, not impulse. You begin to notice how life responds to this stillness, not with chaos, but with alignment. There will be resistance. The loop will not surrender without a dance. Old habits may return dressed in new clothes. Your ego may whisper that you're regressing. But that, too, is the loop. Its last trick is to make you fear you're failing just as you're waking up. So be gentle with yourself. Let the process be non-linear. Integration is not a straight line. It is a spiral, a deepening, a widening of perception. You may revisit old wounds, but you'll meet them from a higher altitude each time. Another sign of deep integration is the emergence of sacred boredom. This may sound odd, but there is a unique type of emptiness that arises once the loop loses its grip. You no longer chase drama. The highs don't seduce you. The lows don't define you. In that stillness, you may feel lost, because the old identity was built around the chase. But stay in the silence. Wait. That silence is not absence. It is the fertile void, the soil of your true self. From that soil, new patterns emerge. Not patterns of reaction, but patterns of creation. You start to dream from presence, not lack. You begin to create not to prove something, but to express something eternal flowing through you. The loop was fueled by the illusion of incompletion. But when you remember your wholeness, what you offer the world becomes a blessing, not a bargain. And yes, even in a world still spinning in its loops, you will find peace. Not because everything outside is calm, but because you have become the still center, the eye of the storm. The loop may continue to orbit around you, but you will not be caught in its gravity. You will walk in the same world, but with a different rhythm, a secret smile, a depth of being that no loop can touch. You will become the exit key for others, not by preaching or persuading, but by embodying the very freedom they forgot was possible. Your presence will be a doorway. Your stillness will speak louder than words. You will become a living symbol, a quiet revolution in the noise of unconscious motion. And so, we come to the edge of this journey, not to end it, but to offer the final breath, the last page, the great return. And now we arrive at the still point, the breath between what was and what could be. This is not the end, but the pause where endings transform into openings. The loop has been named, its layers peeled back, its masks removed. And the exit key, it is no longer a distant secret or an abstract idea. It is with you now, perhaps not in your pocket, but in your perception. Not a tool to be wielded, but a truth to be remembered. The journey through the loop is not a punishment for forgetfulness. It is an invitation into divine remembering. It is the soul's pilgrimage through mirrors, shadows, symbols, and silence. You were never truly trapped. You were dreaming you were trapped. And now, the dream is becoming lucid. This lucidity is not always dramatic. It does not shout. It hums. Like the stillness between heartbeats. Like the moment the mind goes quiet and you feel the pulse of something older than thought. That is where the exit key lives. In awareness so gentle it cannot be stolen, so powerful it cannot be denied. You are not here to transcend your humanity. You are here to embody your divinity within your humanity. To see the divine not as a sky-dwelling abstraction, but as the very essence of your breath, your presence, your love. To see through the loop is not to escape the world, but to return to it, awake, aware, and deeply rooted in truth. And what now? Now you walk the path with eyes wide open. When your old wounds surface, you do not flinch. You recognize the loop's echo, and you greet it, not as a threat, but as a visitor who has overstayed their welcome. You no longer seek to fix or flee. You witness, you breathe, and you remain. When the world pulls at you with its noise, you remember the silent hum beneath it all, the hum that never left, only went unnoticed. You hear it in the space between words, in the gap between thoughts. That space is not empty. It is alive with intelligence. The same intelligence that guides the stars moves through you now. You are not separate from it. You are it, in motion, remembering itself through form. You begin to see the divine in the mundane, in the glint of sunlight on dishwater, in the sigh of traffic, in the trembling of your own vulnerability. The loop told you that holiness was elsewhere, hidden, rare, but you see now. The exit key reveals that everything is holy when seen without distortion. You will fall asleep again. That's part of it. The loop is patient. It returns not as punishment, but as reminder. And each time you awaken within it, the awakening deepens. The spiral widens. You become less reactive, more rooted, less hypnotized, more aligned. Until, slowly, the loop loses its sting, and even its return becomes a kind of grace. And in this grace, you begin to serve. Not from martyrdom, not from superiority, but from overflowing. From the fullness of one who has seen behind the curtain and returned not to shame the play, but to illuminate the stage. You serve with your presence, your compassion, your discernment, your unwavering stillness. You serve simply by being, truly and completely. Some will not understand. Some will cling to their loops as if they were life rafts. Let them. Each soul awakens on its own schedule, and your presence alone will leave ripples. Remember, you are not here to convert. You are here to embody. That is the final paradox. You exit the loop not to leave the world, but to love it more completely. And in that love, the loop becomes transparent. You will laugh more, not out of amusement, but from the cosmic hilarity of remembering. You will cry more, not from pain, but from the beauty of being fully here, unguarded. And you will live with a quality of depth so rare, others will feel it simply by standing near you. This is the quiet revolution, the sacred rebellion. Not against systems, but against amnesia, against forgetting what you truly are. And in this rebellion, there is no violence, only remembrance. No weapons, only awareness. So now, dear traveler, the loop stands before you, not as a prison, but as a puzzle already solved. You don't have to fight it. You only have to see it. That sight, that clarity, is your exit. Take one last breath with intention, not to calm yourself, but to awaken fully in this very moment. Breathe not to relax, but to return. You are the observer, the dreamer, the witness, the architect. You are the loop and the key. You are not trapped. You are free. You always were, and now you remember.